Hi, my name is Caroline Shannon-Karasik. I'm a writer and teacher. My work in progress is Mother Eaten, a memoir.
So I know Caroline because we took Catapult's 12-month essay generator together. It was led by Chloe Caldwell, and it was such an incredible experience in general. I am so glad that is how I spent the first year of the pandemic. And I also got to fall in love with Caroline's writing. And today, she's going to fill me in on what she's done with the manuscript since then.
It's kind of letting that old stuff sit somewhere else and generate new stuff and pretend like that doesn't exist, because it's really challenging when you already have something that's formatted and then trying to go in it and just like plunk things in that you now want to rewrite.
Caroline drops some serious wisdom in this episode. Plus, at the end, you'll get the first ever edition of Prompt Me Daddy.
Prompt Me Daddy, I love this.
So make sure you stick around to the end to get a lesson from Caroline. She's also going to read an excerpt from her work in progress, Mother Eaten, and give us the scoop on the 3 drafts she's written thus far, as well as where she's currently at in the process, and more in today's episode. There's nothing to writing. All you do is sit down at a typewriter and bleed. Welcome to The Bleeders, a podcast and support group about book writing and publishing. I'm writer and podcaster Courtney Kosak, and each week I'll bring you new conversations with authors, agents, and publishers about how to write and sell books. So let's get into it with today's guest. Caroline, I'm so excited to do this after having been in the essay generator together. And now I get to see where you've gone from there.
Yeah. Lucky you.
Yeah, I'm excited. So what's the current working title? Has it changed at all?
It hasn't changed. The title has not changed. It is still Mother Eaten, which is a play on the deeply carnal nature of early motherhood, or at least the early motherhood that I experienced.
Dive into that premise a little bit more. Like, what kind of themes are you exploring? Your writing is so gorgeous.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really beautiful heartbreak. But yeah, explain the premise.
Either that or it'll make you never want to have a baby. Yeah, so, my daughter now is 7. I started the early ideas of this very much just, bleeding into a journal of like, this is really hard. And I was experiencing postpartum depression and anxiety, and it was like nothing I'd ever experienced before. I'd had depression, anxiety, I had the works of mental health, experiences, but this was a whole new thing. And I felt like I had really set myself up for maybe going this path because of my past history. And yet, and so it started with, just writing about those dark corners of postpartum depression and anxiety, and then really leaning into some of the generational trauma that I realized it had opened this chasm of things where I was like, oh, that was really hard when I was a kid, or, I wasn't so kind to my body. And now I look at this little girl and I hope she has a different experience. And so as I began exploring it as an actual thing that I wanted to write, it started as an essay collection, which was very much rooted in, as I said, early motherhood, mental health, substance abuse, and just these ways in which a postpartum identity really doesn't have a shelter in this world. There's like very much this feeling when you're a pregnant woman that everyone has all of these spots for you, whether it's like the cute little apps that tell you about your growing baby, or everyone really being excited for you. You're glowing, ushering this new motherhood in, and then you have the baby. And I remember distinctly having this feeling being wheeled out of the hospital, and later reflecting on it and thinking that was the last real care that anyone really showed this mother body.
That's so dark.
It is. It really is. But yeah, so, it was at its heart is really this idea that a mother's body opens and empties, for birth. And then there's this chasm between that former identity and postpartum identity and my journey getting there. But yeah, and then as I started digging into it more, I realized how much, well, blood and body and just the guts and gore of it all were making its way into my book. And then this very animal sense. I kept returning to animals.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I wrote this whole, which is now a chapter. At the time, it was an essay, all of these genre terms that we have to, switch to. But I wrote this essay at the time that highlighted this idea that a mother spider, it's a specific type of spider, instead of having her babies go at it and kill each other, will just allow them to suck the nutrients from her own legs until she dies. And there was this line that I wrote in there, that she allows herself to be mother eaten. And I was like, oh, that I love that. That's exactly how this feels.
Okay, so from where we left off, because it was in essay form.
Yeah.
And you were exploring, some themes with your mom, some eating disorder themes, some stories about your previous relationship with your husband. Yeah, that animal stuff was starting to come out. So, what's been the evolution since then, and how did you get there?
So the evolution, and I know I'm thinking you're probably familiar with this, or you've at least spoken to enough writers who are, was that, I queried it with a bunch of different agents. I had some great feedback. I since enrolled in an MFA program at Antioch University.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. And started working with a few mentors. And I heard the feedback enough that I think this is a memoir. And for whatever reason, I was like, no, it's not a memoir. I want it to be essays. And I realized that a lot of that was around my own, and I think industry beliefs of what the memoir had to be. And that I couldn't make it fun still, or have these play with form. And I had to go chapter, and have this very, what is the word I want? Linear timeline. And once I allowed myself to realize that there was still freedom in that, and enough people convinced me, I was like, fine, it's a memoir. And so I'm calling it a hybrid memoir right now, because it does still use some of the, it still plays with some of the more conventional function of what a memoir may look like to some people. And so now I've reached this point where I really, like I said, for some people, the more challenging part is getting the guts on the page, that emotional journey. And I was just like, here it is. And it's all was there in my essay collection. Now that I'm moving it to memoir, and I'm getting further into it and farther away from the journey of that immediate visceral experience, I've realized how much I really wanted to ground it more in something external. So I really am starting to even more pull in those animal themes, as well as some reportage around some of the other things you mentioned, like the body and eating disorder, and how we can move from, in my case, my grandmother to my mother to me. And now I have this daughter, and what do I want that to look like? So I very much put the character of me on the page. She's a character. She's very much not me anymore.
I love that. That is kind of freeing too.
It is. Yeah. I'm now in my third rewrite of this, and I can move her around much more easily, and I see where it stops in the book. Like I said, Claire's 7 now, but we're really getting to maybe 5, where she kind of just stays there, and I can, she being me, character me. And I can now put those other things in and feel like I'm anchoring it for other people. It's not just watching me on the page.
Yeah, it's beyond catharsis.
Yes. Here's hoping. Yeah.
Okay, well, I freaking love that title, and
Thank you.
I'm excited to, in the future, read how you've pulled it together, because I feel like it was so strong already.
Well, thank you.
So do you consider the draft that you did in the essay generator draft 1?
I do and I don't. Yes, I say that was draft 1 because it was the most that I'd ever put on the page. However, if I had kept it an essay collection, it most certainly would not have been a complete draft. It definitely still needed a few more essays. It definitely was not, it just wasn't quite there. But definitely a draft. I queried it. I got good feedback on some of the pages that I did submit, and even had some agents say, if you turn this into a memoir, I'd be interested. So I'm hoping to go back to those people. But yeah, I think I'd call it draft one only because I'm leaving it. Like I'm not revisiting it again. That draft lives where it is. And then I rewrote it again in more of a memoir style. And I was still like, something's missing. I'm annoyed by this character. And so now I'm going in and putting in the external things that I really think, I hope will give it a little more legs. So yeah, I think draft one is that essay collection, mostly because I left it where it was.
Totally.
Yeah.
So where in that final process are you like almost done? When are you thinking you're going to go back and query again?
Oh, that would be so great if I was almost done. So I'm actually currently in a project period for my MFA, which our MFA functions as working on our manuscript. So I am very much in a research phase. I've read so much about animal reproductive organs and habits and mothers within the animal kingdom and stuff. And I'm trying to just get all of that information and then put it back in. So next week is like a very heavy writing week for me because I have a turn in the next week. And I'm going to kind of do that throughout these next 5 months. And I'm really hoping by the end of the 5 months, I can at least start doing, the querying again. And I have maybe not a done draft, but a very close draft. So wish for me.
Yes, manifesting. Oh my God, I love it. So let's detour and talk about the MFA for a second.
Yeah.
So, I mean, because I felt like our catapult thing was like a little bit of a taste of, what an MFA would be like, but I have not gone for creative writing. So I'm curious, like, were you like, oh, I just want the structure? What drew you to it? And then what are you getting? What are the pros and cons of the situation?
What drew me to it, honestly, was teaching. I really love teaching and I want to teach at a higher ed level. And you need that piece of paper to do that. And I just really love working with that age group in general. I love working with all of the people that I work with. But I really wanted to get in there with that age group and see them, fly the nest. I loved my college experience so much. And I think that there are so many things to say about the higher ed experience, including the things that I don't love about the way that higher ed education is managed. But for me, it's my opportunity to get in there and maybe be one of the people doing the good thing or the right thing, or, allowing somebody to really take something from the experience. And so, yeah, that's what initially drew me to the MFA. And then now I would say, yes, that, but also I'm so grateful for the deadlines and having, a mentor who's saying, okay, like I understand that this is where you were last time. And then how do we take it to this time? And just really having that experience of someone keeping me on task. Like, last project period, I was just like a hot mess personally. And my mentor was like really understanding. And I actually have him again this time because we have an opportunity to work with different people. I have him again this time. And I was like, are you sure you want to have me? Like, you might want to poke your eyeballs out. And he's like, no, it's fine. And he said, but this time I'm going to kick your ass. And I was like, great, I'm ready. I need that, And so I'm really grateful for that because I think that without it and without even my peers who I get to work with in different settings, I might just be letting that baby sit in the drawer. I don't know. I mean, when you get super busy and you're working and you're momming and you're doing all these things, it's like, it does tend to come last and that sucks. But I always say to my students, like, unfortunately, no one's knocking at our door. Like, hey, can you please write your book? We'd really love to read it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Those external deadlines are just golden.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
So if you were going to give comps for Mother Eaton, what would you say?
Now, a while ago, I had all essay collections that I would have said, like, it's kind of like this, or, I would still say that while I'm seeing the motherhood genre really open and I'm reading a lot more stories, and I'm like, oh, thank God, God, there's people are saying this thing finally. It's still much more slim than I'd like it to be. Originally, when I was doing essay collections, I was like, okay, I really love Bacon O'Connell's and Now We Have Everything. And I wanted it to sit amongst the shelf at least with some books like that. Now, with moving it to a little more of a nonfiction narrative style, I'd say it's like, I mean, by the way, I'm no Leslie Jameson, but like Leslie Jameson's The Recovering meets like Jessica Friedman's Things That Helped, which is, Jameson's is very much a steady back and forth of her personal experience with getting sober and that reportage that I'm looking for. And then Jessica Friedman's Things That Helped is that like deep, dark postpartum depression experience. And so that's kind of if this meets that, type of thing. But I'm seeing so many more. Like Jessie Klein just came out with a great collection.
I was just going to say, yeah.
Yeah. And even like Liz Lenz's Belabored, it's about vindication for pregnant women. Again, more reportage style. So I'm like, if I could just sit on that shelf, I'd be thrilled. So yeah.
Okay. Well, that sounds good. And what would you say is your biggest challenge at the moment with the project?
Oh, I think I've said this to a few people. I think that, I think this can occur in drafting no matter what, and then revision process. But for me right now, it's kind of letting that old stuff sit somewhere else and generate new stuff and pretend like that doesn't exist, because it's really challenging when you already have something that's formatted and then trying to go in it and just like plunk things in that you now want to rewrite. So I'm trying to do the research and then get into my like cut it up and put it on the floor phase and see where things puzzle in. Because for a long time, I kept looking at the manuscript as it was and thinking, how do I rewrite this? How do I begin to really put this new overlay on it? And it was just messing me up because I couldn't get out of that.
That's so smart.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
God damn it. I'm like, okay. Maybe I need to think about that myself.
Yeah. It was just really tripping me up. I just couldn't get away from that voice and thinking that it had to just even exist at all. Like, who's to say that even those pieces will end up, a lot of the pieces that I, cut up and lay out will fit anymore. I don't know. And so that was my biggest challenge, was just like putting that aside and allowing myself to create new material without worrying that what I already created may or may not be lost. Because I think we like attach in that way. And it's like, well, but what if it doesn't fit, And it's like, well, it doesn't fit, I guess, And so that has allowed me to move forward in this. Also really like separating my research and my generative, weeks or phases or whatever, like just doing a ton of research and allowing myself to do what sometimes we're like, I'm doing research, and it's like, well, technically I'm avoiding writing, but I actually do need to do this research. Right. And so giving myself that opportunity too, and not feeling like that wasn't writing has been, I'm very like, strict about those types of things, and just giving myself that freedom to just read and research and think about how like the tiniest line from a book about, animal pain can somehow fit in this giant manuscript that I'm, trying to create.
Oh my God. Brilliant. Because also too, if you don't give yourself space in the research, you're just like, in a way, translating what somebody else wrote. If you don't have enough space to like think about what you think about that, you know what I mean? You're just like inserting a quote from someone or, whatever, which is like not as rich at all.
Exactly.
Whew, you just blew my mind. Those are very smart hacks. Because I think also too, there is some like subconscious desire to just be like, well, I wrote 150 pages or whatever. Like, I can't, like, this is the furthest I've come. I can't let it go.
Yeah, totally. That's really challenging. And it feels so overwhelming because you've already crossed that overwhelming threshold like multiple times, right? You're like, I did it. Right. And then to go back, it's like, damn, I have to start at square one, or at least pretend that I'm starting at square one just to try to get this forward.
Here is Caroline reading from her work in progress, Mother Eaten.
This is an excerpt from Imperfect Orbit. I was in the emergency room again. The monitor beeped. Alive, alive, alive. Dan and Claire were in a chair at my side. Claire was still wearing the white fleece pajamas with pink roses I zipped her up in the night before, my favorites. It had been 4 a.m. when I shook Dan by the shoulder. 4 a.m. when I scooped my sleeping baby from her crib and put her in the car seat. And now they were both sitting there, and I willed the sight of them to shake me from what I could not stop from wanting. My need to be swathed in hospital smells and fluorescent lighting. The doctors and nurses with their monitors and charts and tests to assure me of my aliveness. The doctor walked in and did a couple of quick checks, pressing on my abdomen and listening to my heartbeat. He was a large man with a handlebar mustache and wiry gray hair. His bedside manner was akin to a clown sent to make kid-appropriate jokes at my panic attack party. "So what you got going on?" he said in a sing-song voice, which felt like an attempt to distract me from myself. I noticed a koala pinched to his stethoscope and felt like I was being mocked. I listed my symptoms, all of which I no longer felt, save for my lungs, which were exhausted as if I'd returned from a winter run. Lungs pumped full of cold air. For all I know, it's because I had a baby. I laughed, but knew it was true. "Well, they are aliens, right?" he said, eyeing me above his glasses, a gotcha grin on his face. He was probably everyone's favorite grandpa. I wanted to punch him. I said nothing, so he went on, referencing a new study that showed cells from a fetus enter a mother's body during pregnancy and stayed within her forever, not unlike a foreign invasion. I mustered a wow, but I'd be lying if I didn't tell you I'd felt like there was an intruder in my body ever since my daughter's birth, something clawing at my throat to make its way out.
Ooh. Yay. Makes me
Thank you.
even more unsure about motherhood, but wonderful writing.
Thank you.
I want to actually circle back. And when you did that first round of querying,
Yeah.
because I've read different philosophies. Some people go in waves. Some people spray the town. Not a good idea, I don't think. But
No.
How did you approach it?
Yeah, I think I probably did about 5 at a time. And what would be like a wave of my own, I guess. I did 5 and then took a little bit of reassess and then would do 5. And then once I kept getting no response, which is always fun, or no thank you, but no real feedback. And then the really generous ones I did. I have a solid 6 who were like, "I like this, but I feel like it would do better as a memoir. Query me again." I then decided to pause and not spray the town with the manuscript that I felt wasn't quite there yet. But yeah, I did 5 at a time. Every once in a while, I'd have a super sassy day and do 8, But more or less, I worked in small bits like that. And I also really, really researched who I thought would even take something in this, field at all, whether it was that they had a strong motherhood bend or even parenting, or, at the time it was an essay collection. They were publishing new collections and still had a steady, want for that type of work. But yeah, and then I just paused altogether and I was like, okay, let's reassess and see what you really want to do with this.
How many do you think you sent out?
Solid 30.
30?
Probably.
And you got 6
yeah,
maybes?
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Wrote them an email back and was like, "Thank you. Thank you so much for your pleasant rejection," Yeah. So I'm excited about that. I'm also not putting all of my eggs in that basket of them definitely taking it or whatever. They could just be being really nice, right? I've also had a chance to meet with a couple agents through my MFA program, which has been really helpful, and actually read them my new query letter and get feedback on that. Yeah. So I'm excited to get back out there. I think it's really hard to sit on it once you feel like you've reached a point of it maybe being at least almost ready, and just putting in that little bit more time to get it not perfect at all, but a solid draft, where you want it to be, and then start querying again.
How are you approaching publishing in the meantime? Are you just I'm not going to focus on this at all? Are you trying, what's your whole?
Yeah. So, I teach a lot of pitching classes. I've actually put my own pitching on hold to work on my book, and also start to get really pointed about where I want to place some of these long form essays that I have, because the pitching that I teach is for those quick pubs. It's let's get them out into the mainstream. Let's publish them. It's not doing the classic submittable, here's my essay, please take it, thing.
Right.
So for me right now, my publishing goals are working on that book and then really trying to decide some solid really refine some solid pieces, even if they're not things that go in my book, really decide where I want those to go and get them published. Because I have a lot of the other kind of publishing I've done it, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Totally.
And I'm not opposed to it. I just also have to like use my time and be able to do it. So I was just like, decided to pause that and really just start placing some stuff that I'm hoping to get published.
Yeah, nice. What is your favorite piece, your all-time favorite piece of your own writing?
Of my own writing? Oh, geez. I think that, and I don't know that this will go in the book in the form that it is, but I'm still pushing for it. I wrote an essay based on the Edinburgh postpartum depression scale.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, but instead like inserted the real answers instead of like a yes, no, kind of, type of thing that they do.
We were like, oh shit, Caroline's funny.
Right. And so for me, I think that is one that I gravitate to because a lot of the stuff that I write is really dark to the point where like in my book, I actually have a page that says like rest page on it. It's just a blank page because I want the reader to like actually take a breath with me. Because I know that levity is necessary. And so that piece for me is really the place that I ended up reaching, which is this ability to reflect on this terrible experience and poke at it and be a little funny, even if it's darkly funny with it. And also like that essay has like my ultimate book trailer excerpt in it, which is where I actually show my sister how to take a poop or shit after
oh my God.
after having a baby. And I keep telling everyone, I was like, I want my book trailer to be me acting that out because I think it will save women everywhere.
Oh shit.
Yeah. So but jokes aside, it's for me like a version of me that you don't really see, which is like, at that point, I'm 3 years in. I had postpartum depression for 3 years. I'm 3 years in. I'm able to laugh at myself a little bit and like remember this earlier time in motherhood where I was a little unsure of what was happening. At least this time I'm like, yeah, I know this is postpartum depression. I understand this a little bit more. And you see a little more of that voice where I'm willing to like laugh at myself, even though it's scary as shit.
Yes, I like that select. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to do a prompt, but tell listeners about your classes and where they can learn from you.
I would love to plug my classes. Well, first of all, I teach at Catapult. I teach a 1-day seminar where we just like from start to finish, 4 hours, talk about how to get your work published and what a pitch even looks like, whether it's, you're cold pitching someone or you are sending them a completed piece and wanting them to publish it, where to find editors, all of that stuff. That's my staple class, where we just like power through it and really, get the down and dirty version of everything. I also teach at writing workshops. I have a couple classes coming up at Writer Diatribe, which is great. And then I started to teach through my own website, which is cskarasik.com.
Awesome.
And offer, independent studies or one-to-one sessions with people, even if they just want like that quick session. You meet with me, we talk about a pitch. I'm like, this is what's working, this is what's not working. And then we send it off into the world. And I like them all for different reasons. Like I love my classes. It's high energy. I talk with my hands a lot, and, and then I love the one-to-one sessions because I get to really get to know someone's writing. I'm working with some really amazing writers right now. And I will go out into the world and talk about the stuff they're working on. And I'm like, I was talking about your collection today, or whatever. And that's really fun too.
So I'm curious, do you feel like, does it suck energy away from your own projects, or do you feel like it feeds it in a way, or is it a mixed bag?
I'd say I'm very invested in the people that I work with, like so much so that they make fun of me. I'll be like, oh, I was getting a shower the other day and I was thinking about your piece. And they're like, Caroline, like take a break. So I'm very invested. I've had to learn how to like shut it down sometimes because I will just keep really working for another person to get their work published because I believe in the people that I work with. And so because I've been able to just really like set like some calendar appointments that actually work with me, some hard boundaries, it really does fuel my writing process. It excites me to talk about other people's work. And then also I always say this to people that I'm working with, like any advice I'm giving you is for me too. So I'm in the middle of, talking to someone about an essay collection they're working on, and I'm looking at what they're doing and talking to them about it and thinking, oh, that's actually, I should think about that for myself, And so right now that I've learned how to actually navigate the whole teaching thing, it's been a few years and of doing it, I feel very energized by working with people in whatever capacity, whether it's a group setting or one-to-one.
Nice. Pitch that website one more time.
Oh, it's cskarasik.com.
And I have to say, you give super thoughtful feedback. So I'm sure you're wonderful with your one-to-ones and regular students as well.
Well, thank you.
Will you share your social media handles?
Yes. On Instagram, I'm Caroline Shannon-Karasik, and which is really long and I should probably change it. And on Twitter, I'm CS Karasik.
Okay, perfect. So to leave listeners with something tangible, something they can work with, let's do the first ever edition of Prompt Me Daddy.
Prompt Me Daddy. I love this. So listen, the thing that I want to say first is that when I get to the end of all of my classes with people, it's like one of the top questions that I get is how to build clips, which for listeners who don't know what a clip is, if you're old school enough and you have the paper published thing of the thing you wrote, it's you literally clip it out and you have it. Now we publish a lot more online and it's a little bit different, but the thing that I always tell people is like, write a hell of a query letter or, a pitch in this case. If you do the things that we talk about and even some of the things I'm going to talk about today, it really is the best clip that you'll ever have, because editors read, 2-3 paragraphs and they're sold or they're not. They're not going to necessarily care about all the places you have or haven't been published. I just feel like I have to say that. So the first thing I want to talk about is, how to drum up ideas. And one of the things that I use as an example all the time and I encourage people to do is really start thinking like a writer. And that's not to say there is that expression like read like a writer. This is more like living your life like a writer and walking through the world and beginning to see opportunities for writing or pitching in this format. And so when things happen in the news or like Kim Kardashian says something or whatever it is, I run through a list with people that I ask them, and I tell them to ask themselves, which is, does this affect me? Does it affect my family, my community, my religion, my neighborhood, whatever it is, my children? And then do I have an opinion about this? And if that keeps going around and around and around in my head, I probably should write about it or at least try and draft something about it. And then, is it a trend or conversely, is it a lack of a trend? And after we do that, I tell people about this thing that is really from when I was in undergrad for journalism, which we would talk a lot about, like the questions that I had just asked you. And then, the idea of something small happening in your day-to-day life and thinking, how does this go big? So it's either go big or go small. And so in this case, we're going big. Something small happens, something happens in my backyard. In my case, I use the example a lot. I ended up in an emergency room with panic attacks from postpartum depression and got shooed out the door. And I thought, well, shit, who else is this happening to? So something small and take it big, or take something big that's happening in the world or your neighborhood or whatever and bring it in, bring it all the way in sometimes to just how it affects you personally. And that alone is a great way to start generating ideas for pitches, because that is how some of the best pieces are written, which is how it's affecting you or how something that affected you is affecting the world. And I do that all the time to the point of like, is there a counterpoint? I like to use this example a lot with like when cauliflower rice was a trend. I'd say like, okay, cauliflower rice is a trend, but I have this Cuban mother-in-law who taught me the cultural importance of rice and the ins and outs of cooking. True story. She would kill me if I brought cauliflower rice into her house, or maybe I'm like, I have a health perspective on that. And it's like, well, no, actually eating grains is good for you. That counterpoint is really important. And then to like your voicey prompt me daddy, I do this thing that's called Let's Talk About Your Beat Baby, which is when people decide that the things that they're writing about have longevity. So I write a lot about mental health. I write a lot about motherhood. And all of a sudden, I'm realizing I could keep writing about this, which sometimes trips people up. They're like, can I keep writing the same thing? And I'm always like, yes, you can keep writing the same thing. Please write the same thing, because that's how, especially when you're trying to publish a book, people start to know you then as the person who writes about motherhood or who constantly talks about her mental health or whatever. So I always say, I walk people through this exercise, which is I'm obsessed with insert here because, and this is what I actually ask them to do into their phone, because I've noticed in workshops that people are the freest whenever they're explaining something to you with their just, well, it's kind of like this. And you're like, great, say that. That's perfect.
Yes.
And so I say, like, pick up your phone and record yourself. And then everybody hates this exercise because they don't want to hear themselves talk. But I say, just talking to your phone. I'm obsessed with, and I'll go with myself, motherhood, because I don't think enough people talk about it. And I don't think enough people talk about it and then just go off and then go into like, I first realized this when I basically walked in the door from the hospital and nobody was paying attention to me. And I was feeling the way that I was feeling, all of the things we've already talked about. And then these are some important takeaways from that, and list them. Like, why does it matter? Why does society care? Why do we need it as a culture? Why does it matter to you? And why do you even hope that it matters to even one other reader? And just talk yourself through that. And I had people all the time who hate this exercise, but end up talking for 30 minutes about something that's really important to them. And it's also, at the very least, you'll hear why it matters and why you want to keep exploring it, or who it's for, and maybe even some ideas in there, where you forgot about something, but you're speaking off the cuff and you get to hear yourself talking about it. And you're like, oh shit, that's actually a good idea. I should look into that. So that's one of the first things that I take people through whenever we are just really trying to decide the thing that they want to say the most. Because sometimes it's all over the place and sometimes they don't realize how much they actually just want to talk about this one thing.
I love that. Okay. There were several prompts in there, but
there were, I know.
I'm obsessed with. Thank you so much. This was amazing to catch up with you.
You're so welcome. It was amazing. Thanks for having me.
That's it for this edition of The Bleeders. You have all been officially prompted by our daddy, Caroline, so you have your assignment. If you missed the last episode with Elle Nash, make sure to go back and check it out. Elle is another indie lit dynamo that offered such great advice in her interview. Here is a little preview of that conversation.
I think the biggest deciding factor for me in how anything is structured comes down to how close you are to the person's psychic experience. So I think about that term a lot, psychic distance, and it's how far away are you from this character? I sometimes find it really hard to enjoy third person because in a lot of third person stories, I tend to just feel too distant from the narrator or the character that I'm reading about. And I want to feel close to them. I want to forget that I'm a person. I want to be experiencing this character as close as I can.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of The Bleeders. Writing is so much better with friends. I'm your host, Courtney Kosak, and let's connect on social media. I am at Courtney Kosak, Kosak, on Twitter and Instagram. And make sure you're signed up for the Bleeders Companion Substack. I am actually about to dive into a rewrite and then start querying. I am excited and a little bit nervous. So anyway, I'm going every other week with the podcast for the next couple months. And I'm definitely going to report back about querying on the pod eventually, but I'm going to try to post about it more in real time on the Substack. So make sure you're signed up. There is a link in the episode description. And I hope you'll join me on Thursday, August 11th for a very special guest coming to us all the way from Africa. In the meantime, happy bleeding.